Hey guys, Max here, and this is of course your daily market update for yesterday, the 3rd of August, and we saw a massive rally, particularly in tech stocks, basically because investors looked over the earnings reports that we got pre-market and they decided that they were really bullish, so of course tech stocks had to rise. The S&P 500 then rose by 1.6%, the Nasdaq rose by 2.7%, and the Dow Jones rose by only 1.3% for the day. Across the rest of the world, it was a similar story, but far less volatile, with the gains being far fewer and far smaller on average. The FTSE 100 rose by about 0.5%, as did the Stoxx 600, and on the whole, the MSCI World Index rose by about 1% for the day. The dollar actually didn't weaken as we would usually expect it to when equities rise. It didn't really change much at all. The euro also didn't really change much. It's still sitting at $1.02. The pound fell very slightly and is sitting at $1.21. And the yen fell a fair bit by about 0.5% and is down to 134 yen per dollar. For bond markets, it was a little bit less volatile than the day before, but still we did see some movement. The US 10-year Treasury yield fell by 5 basis points down to 2.7%. The German and British 10-year yields, though, rose by 5 basis points, so no concerted movement in bond yields around the world, to be honest. Finally then, for oil prices, we did actually see oil prices fall a drastic amount for the day, about 4% for the most part. Actually, energy stocks in general fell massively for the day, and they were the only sector that was actually very red for yesterday alone, with most stocks being down by about 3 or 4% each. And the reason for that is very simple: oil prices fell too. Gold prices are still sitting at pretty much where they have been for the last few days, at $1,780 an ounce then. As for the crypto market, well, behind me we have a list of the largest crypto coins by market cap on Binance, and as you can see, most of them were down slightly for the day, but it wasn't an awful day at all. Bitcoin sitting below $23,000, which isn't brilliant. Ethereum sitting just above $1,600, and most other altcoins falling by something in the region of 2% for the day. One really big piece of news that we did have that I will hope to cover in a full video in a day or so is we've seen another massive Solana hack, with thousands of individual wallets being hacked on a bunch of different decentralized apps, and that's of course very bad news. It's bad for Solana, it's bad for decentralized finance in general, but in my opinion it isn't too surprising because Solana and most of the apps built upon it are just an absolute dumpster fire, and these kind of frauds and hacks are way too common. First, a quick message from this video's sponsor, NordPass. Now, if you're like me, you value your privacy and security, but you're not necessarily the most organized person, then you need to hear about this video's sponsor, NordPass. Just last week, I found myself trying to book a holiday online. All was going well. I found a nice villa, good views and dates that fit my schedule, but it all fell apart when I had to log into a website that I hadn't used in years. I'd created my account so long ago that I wasn't even sure what email I'd used, and to make matters worse, I'd cycled through a number of different passwords between then and now as well to try and stay safe. Cue 20 minutes of trying every possible combination of username and password that my mind could conjure up, and I just ended up telling myself that screw it, I'll take a holiday next year instead. But NordPass fixes this problem. They're a password manager that generates unique passwords and then safely stores them as well. You can access your passwords on any device or browser at any time, so you never find yourself in the same situation that I did. NordPass helps keep you safe as well by generating complex and random passwords that are far harder to crack, and you can also store personal information or payment details, saving you the time of having to manually input basic information every single day. On top of all that, they offer a bunch of other stuff like their data breach scanner, which can find out whether or not you've had personal data compromised before. It's super affordable, and you can get exclusive access to NordPass's best offer by going to nordpass.com/stoicfinance, or you can click the link in the description or the comment section down below, or just use code STOICFINANCE at checkout to get an extra month free. Now, as for the general market moves for the day, we saw the rally continue and the stocks rise again. Now, why did that happen? Well, basically because the earnings reports that we got over the day before that, well, they buoyed investor sentiment, but it just doesn't really make much sense in my opinion. Yesterday, for example, we spoke about Robinhood's earnings report for the last quarter, and it was bad absolutely everywhere, and in after hours trading since getting that report, their share price fell by about 4% on that bad news. Yesterday though, when markets actually opened back up, investors just changed their minds unanimously and suddenly decided that Robinhood's earnings report was really good, and so the share price rose by about 16% out of absolutely nowhere. Now, this has no logic whatsoever. We had rock bottom expectations for Robinhood, and Robinhood somehow managed to perform even worse than those rock bottom expectations. Their revenue was a miss, and it's now down by 40% year over year. That's not even not a growth company anymore. That's now a shrinking company. They lost 34 cents per share, which for a $9 share is an absolutely massive loss. The number of monthly active users on Robinhood is shrinking, and the assets under custody for them is shrinking as well. And then finally, they announced that they're firing 23% of their entire staff because they can't afford to keep them up while the company continues to perform poorly. Now, somehow the markets took that bad news and interpreted it as very good, causing a 16% share price rise over the course of one single day. Now, the argument from the people making this claim seems to be loosely that less staff means fewer costs for Robinhood and so more profitability. So actually the fact that they're culling almost a quarter of their workforce is a good thing. Now, the problem with this idea is that these are employees. They're not just expenses. They build and they create and they help Robinhood grow. And firing 23% of your staff is an absolutely massive cut to be making, and it's not a good thing. It's a sign that the company is going to be struggling, and it's probably going to be dying over the next few years if they have to make such a drastic move like that. We did also see the CEO of Robinhood, Vlad, come out, and he said that Robinhood isn't going to get acquired. It's going to actually go out and acquire other companies, which is absolute lunacy as well. This dumpster fire of a company that is decreasing in size by 40% per year, while it now wants to go out and buy other companies while it can't even manage its own growth. Robinhood being bought by a company like FTX or hell any other company in the world would actually be good for Robinhood, but investors took this sentiment from the CEO as good news because it's just needlessly bullish, and these investors are blind to seeing the actual truth. This kind of price movement with Robinhood of this massive volatility on no news whatsoever is entirely emblematic of a broken financials market that has been broken by over a decade of quantitative easing and interest rates being hiked while inflation is maintaining high, and investors who just refuse to accept the reality that actually things aren't always going to be as good as they were over the last few years. The reality is that absolutely nothing about this company changed between where it was trading, its share price after hours before the market opened up yesterday, and then when it closed. And yet the value of the company fluctuated by about 16%. That is literally insane, and I really don't know what else I can say here, but thankfully I'm not the only person calling out how ludicrous this is. We heard from the Fed's Kashgari, who came out and said a few different things. Firstly, he said that actually it's incredibly unlikely that the Fed cuts rates at all throughout 2023. And then he also said that he's unsure what the markets are looking at. He's literally the president of the Federal Reserve of Minneapolis, and he doesn't know why markets are rising. He doesn't see any reason for them to be rising. He calls it out as it is, and that it's irrational. Now, the final bit today about companies and corporate earnings and things like that, we got some new news coming out of Walmart that they are going to be cutting another 200 of their corporate jobs because they're struggling with rising costs. They've got their bloated inventories, and demand for their products and their services is actually weakening as well. And this is, if you've ever seen it, a surefire sign of a recession. The share price for Walmart is down by almost 1% overnight on this specific news, and this is after they've already had their incredibly volatile year so far. Now, usually a company like Walmart or consumer defensive should expect to actually do well, or at least not do poorly in a recession, but that is a normal recession, something that we saw in 2000 or 2008, not one where inflation remains elevated for months and years on end. Inflation is shaking up the entire market, and no one really knows how to invest in this kind of environment because it's been about 50 years since we had this environment, and even then it's still completely unprecedented. So this could be a very tough quarter for consumer defensives as we move forward. Now, of course, we've spoken a little bit about it already, but Pelosi's trip to Taiwan has just finished, and China's retaliation of, military action of actually going out and shooting down planes obviously never happened in the end, but they have gone through with a few other things, namely loads of military exercises very, very close to Taiwan and actually inside some of Taiwan's waters, about as close as they can possibly get to the island. They've also put out a bunch of missile launches. They've sent loads of ships out to sea. They've sent loads of planes flying about, and they're flying into Taiwanese airspace, stuff like that. And then they've announced a bunch of economic sanctions against Taiwan too, including banning a bunch of agricultural goods and in particular food imports to Taiwan. They've also banned sand exports to Taiwan, which wasn't something I knew that they exported a lot of, but apparently Taiwan likes Chinese sand, but that's no longer going to be allowed. And then a whole load of Chinese tech companies have been banned from working with Taiwan at all, like HiWeb and Speedtech Energy. Then China reiterated its position that there is a criminalization of separatists, of people who support Taiwan's independence from China. Of course, they came about from a civil war about 70 years ago now, and so they both still claim to be the legitimate China, and so they see each other as separatists from the true government. Then we had the number of diplomatic protests that were launched by China to oppose this trip. The US ambassador has been summoned and he's been chastised, and a bunch of Communist Party government officials have come out and basically said that the US must pay for their mistakes. Then China cancelled a meeting with Japan after Japan and a bunch of other G7 countries went out and condemned China's military actions so close to Taiwan. And then China sent off a whole load of cyber attacks yesterday, a 20-minute long attack on all Taiwanese government websites, which is about 200 times longer than usual. Over in the US, we have the Democrat Party actually trying to support Taiwan further, far more than usual, and they're actually being quite principled, which is a little bit rare. What they want to do is have Taiwan designated as a major non-NATO ally, which would basically enhance their protection and their commitment to ensuring the independence of Taiwan. Now, Biden and the White House are very scared of inflaming tensions with China. They have so many problems on their plate right now, and the last thing they need is China turning around and blocking exports to the US and causing massive supply side shocks again. So the White House is now lobbying against the Democrats, of which they are basically the same, and they're trying to get this bill to fail because it would cause far too many problems for this administration, even if in the long run it would be beneficial for almost everyone in the world. This is quite a bad look for Biden, but it really isn't surprising though. This whole story though, everything coming out of China and the US and even Japan and Taiwan and places like this, it's all emblematic of the worsening relations between East and West that we're going to continue to see in recent months. And as more export controls are put between countries, more trade tariffs, barriers and things like that, markets will begin to be impacted by these worsening relations. Now, we had a little bit of a weird story coming out with legacy media and an accusation that they're making towards Wall Street bets that we've got another GameStop on our hands. Now, AMTD is just some random Chinese junk company that recently has seen its share price increase by 21,400%, which is absolutely insane. Now, if you read anything from CNN, CNBC, as you can see here, Bloomberg, any legacy media outlet, well, they're basically saying that this is one of Wall Street Bet's short squeezes or their meme stock pumps. The problem is, though, it very clearly isn't, because there's been no mention of AMTD on the Wall Street Bet subreddit really at all until these news pieces started coming out accusing Wall Street Bets of creating this pump of this weird, obscure Chinese stock. It's a really weird situation with these legacy media outlets even recognizing that this company doesn't even trade on public markets, so how they expected millions of Wall Street Bet retail traders to go around and buy up the supply of these shares, I really don't know, but that is the accusation they're making. Now, this company is now valued at something like $400 billion. That's in the region of a company like Netflix, when its fair market value is probably closer to something like $20 million. It seems pretty clear, in my opinion, that this is some weird Chinese scam and fraud from the company itself, but the legacy media are acting as perfect, useful idiots and blaming retail investors for something that really has absolutely nothing to do with them. Finally, then, the last story for us today is that there's a load of crazy stuff going on between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, of course, they had a small war in 2020 and then they had a ceasefire. But over the last day or so, it appears this ceasefire has been broken. It's not clear who broke it first. Both sides, of course, claim that the other side broke it first, as they always do, but it could very clearly escalate from here. Now, Armenia is backed by Russia, Azerbaijan is backed by Turkey, and the last time this came to conflict, thousands of people were killed on both sides, and if war breaks out again, it really could have absolutely massive implications for the world, because it could drag in other major countries. Now, Iran has taken a whole load of their military forces and they've sent them to the borders of both of these countries. Maybe they're getting ready to get involved. It isn't really clear at this point. Russia and Ukraine had that deal to export grain through the Black Sea, which was brokered by Turkey. So that entire deal could be in jeopardy, as it seems like relations between Russia and Turkey are about to deteriorate. Of course, Russia and Turkey could themselves get involved in this war, either as a proxy war or even just get fully involved themselves. Turkey is a NATO member. They're not exactly on great terms with NATO, but they are a member nonetheless. And it's possible that Turkey sees how Russia has its hands full with Ukraine, how their military power is all tied up over further to the north. So maybe they see an opportunity here to increase their influence. Maybe that's exactly what Azerbaijan is doing. They're sensing that Russia isn't in a position to help Armenia out right now, so they're capitalizing on the situation. It's all an absolutely crazy situation, and I will try to keep you all updated as to what exactly is happening as it comes out. We are at very early days right now. It's a very hot topic. I just want to stress that no matter what you hear online from whatever source, no one really knows what's going on so far. This has literally only been a story for about 16 hours at this point. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to bless the YouTube algorithm. It really does help. If you want to join our exclusive community, then check out our Patreon. You get access to our Discord server and extra content like access to my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. Also, make sure to check out the link in the description to Masterworks. It can help you protect your portfolio against market turmoil through fractional shares of art from world-famous artists. Art has historically proven to be uncorrelated to the markets, so it's a really valuable resource with the markets falling every week. There's also a link in the description to I Trust Capital, which helps you to invest in crypto through your tax-advantaged IRA, which could literally save you thousands. If you, like me, think crypto going down is a buy-in opportunity, then now is the perfect time to join I Trust Capital. Thank you all for watching. Stay stoic. Until next time.